The Union of Allied Species had gathered in silence inside the Great Hall of the Council. The room was once filled with pride, decorated with banners of many colors, each one representing a race that had joined the great dream of unity. But now the banners were torn, some half-burned, some missing entirely. The smell of smoke and the faint sound of alarms still echoed even here, deep inside the safety of the station. It was the last safe place they had, or so they thought. Admiral Corvin of the Althari sat heavy in his chair, his wings folded close to his body, no longer open with pride but curled with defeat. His eyes were dark, filled with the shadows of too many lost battles. Around him sat other leaders. The Kethar envoy, tall and thin, stared blankly at the table. The Vren diplomat with silver scales had tears forming between his unblinking eyes. The room felt more like a grave than a council chamber. The Vratil dominion was unstoppable. That was the truth no one wanted to say out loud, but every single being there knew it. The Dominion fleets were larger, their weapons stronger, their hunger endless. They swept across the galaxy like fire, consuming world after world. Colonies burned, fleets vanished, and people begged for protection that could no longer be given. Every battle lost made the Dominion stronger, because they took what they destroyed and added it to themselves. The Union had tried to resist, but resistance was not enough. The meeting began with whispers, each race speaking only to themselves, afraid to raise their voice. Finally, Corvin rose. His voice was not strong as it once was, but it carried the weight of truth. "We have lost the Rim colonies," he said. "The Dominion is at our gates. We have no more ships to send, no more soldiers to train. Our fleets are broken. Our defenses are crumbling." No one interrupted him. They all knew. They had all received the same reports, had all seen the same flames consume their people. He lowered his head. "If we do nothing, our union ends here." There was silence for a long time, broken only by the sound of someone's breathing. Then, a voice from the far side of the chamber spoke. It was Sci-Fi, the youngest member of the Vren delegation. Her voice trembled but did not break. "Then we must ask for help. We must send our call to the stars." The suggestion was met with bitter laughter from some and hopeless sighs from others. The Kethar envoy shook his head. "We have already asked," he said. "We have begged our neighbors. We have sent words into the void. None have answered." Sci pressed her hands against the table. "Then we must try again. We must reach farther. There must be someone out there who will hear." The argument grew. Some called it foolish. Some said it was cowardly to beg. Others said it was the only chance left. But slowly, as the debate went on, despair began to turn into a thin thread of hope. For what else could they do? Their fleets were gone, their armies broken. Their only weapon left was hope itself. At last, Admiral Corvin raised his hand and the chamber grew quiet. He looked around at the tired faces, at the hopeless eyes, and he nodded. "Then we will send it. We will send our voice into the stars. A cry not just for soldiers, not just for ships, but for anyone who still believes in survival. We will send it, though we know no one may answer." The council voted not with the energy of leaders ready for battle, but with the weary acceptance of those with no other choice. The decision was made. The message would be sent. Technicians were called into the chamber, setting up the old beacon that had not been used for centuries. It was a device meant for emergencies, for times when all else had failed. Its power was vast, its signal strong enough to cross entire galaxies. The council gathered around as the beacon came to life, its surface glowing faint blue. Sci stepped forward, her small form trembling as she faced the recording crystal. She looked back at Corvin, who gave her a slow nod. Then she spoke. "To any who hear this message," she began, her voice carrying through the chamber, "we are the Union of Allied Species. We are under attack. The Vratil Dominion destroys our homes, our fleets, our families. We cannot resist much longer. We beg you, whoever you are, if you can hear us, please come. Please help us." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of dying worlds. The beacon stored them, amplified them, and then, with a great burst of light, cast them into the endless dark of space. The council waited, staring at the beacon as if expecting an answer to come at once. Of course, none came. The message was gone, traveling faster than light, spreading across stars and voids. The answer, if it came at all, would not be soon. Days passed. The station remained on alert. Reports of more lost colonies arrived, each one another wound on the spirit of the council. Some leaders no longer came to meetings, preferring to remain hidden in their chambers, awaiting the inevitable end. The beacon had done its work, but hope was fragile and it faded quickly. Admiral Corvin remained at his post. Though his heart was heavy, he watched the stars. He thought of the battles he had fought, of the friends and soldiers he had lost. He wondered if they had made a mistake, if calling into the void had been nothing but a waste of their last strength. Sci-Fi, however, refused to give up. She returned to the beacon every day, sitting in silence beside it, as if her presence could help the signal reach farther. Others mocked her, called it childish hope, but she did not stop. And then something happened. The sensors picked up a disturbance at the edge of the system. At first it seemed like nothing more than static, a trick of the void, but then the signal grew stronger. A ship was approaching. Not a fleet, not a massive army, but one ship, small by the standards of the Dominion, old by the standards of the Union. But it was not a Dominion vessel. It was not one of their enemies. It was something entirely new. The Council rushed to the chamber, fear and confusion mixing in equal measure. Admiral Corvin stared at the readings, his wings twitching in disbelief. "Identify it," he ordered. The technician struggled, but at last the answer came. "Unknown origin. But it is human." The word carried through the room, and for a moment there was only silence. Few had ever spoken of humans. They were not part of the Union. They were distant, living in some far part of the galaxy, quiet and unimportant. No one had expected them to come. Yet here they were. Sci-Fi's eyes widened with wonder. "Someone answered," she whispered. Corvin leaned forward, his heart beating faster than it had in years. One ship, one human ship. It could not change the war. It could not defeat the Dominion. And yet, for the first time in a long time, he felt something he had thought lost forever. Hope. The human ship moved slowly into the system, its metal surface dull compared to the shining warships of the Union or the terrifying dark hulls of the Dominion. It looked simple, almost fragile, and many in the council chamber whispered in disappointment. They had hoped for a fleet, for dozens of ships, maybe hundreds. Instead, they had one. Only one. Admiral Corvin sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the screen that showed the image of the approaching vessel. His heart fought between hope and despair. He had prayed for a miracle, but this did not look like one. The first signal came through. It was not in the languages of the Union, but the translators worked quickly. A calm voice filled the chamber, steady and clear. "This is Captain Daniel Carter of the Terran ship Horizon. We received your message. We are here to help." The words were simple. They carried no great promises of victory, no boasts of power, but the tone was firm. Daniel Carter spoke as if the decision had already been made, as if he had no doubt that he was needed here. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. Sci-Fi leaned forward, her face glowing with excitement. "They came," she whispered. "They really came." Others were not so hopeful. The Kethar envoy shook his head in disbelief. "One ship will not save us. The Dominion will crush them as they have crushed us all." Daniel Carter's face appeared on the main screen, the translation adjusting to match his movements. He was a human male with tired eyes but a strong gaze. His uniform was plain, his background simple. He did not look like a hero, but his voice carried weight. "I know you expected more," he said. "I know one ship seems small compared to what you face, but I am here, and I do not turn away from those who call for help. Tell me what you need. Tell me where the fight is hardest." Silence filled the chamber. The council had no answer at first. Their fleets were gone, their defenses shattered. They needed everything, but they had nothing to give. At last, Admiral Corvin rose to his feet. "Captain Carter," he said, his voice heavy, "you do not understand the scale of what we face. The Dominion has thousands of ships. They burn worlds and break fleets. They cannot be stopped by one vessel. Not even yours." Daniel nodded slowly. "Maybe not. But every great enemy has weakness. I have fought battles before where numbers did not decide the outcome. I ask only this. Show me what the Dominion has done. Show me where they will strike next. Let me see for myself." The council agreed, though many did so only out of pity, believing the human would soon realize the truth and flee. Data was sent to the Horizon, and Daniel Carter studied it with care. On the Horizon's bridge, his first officer, Amanda Lewis, stood beside him. She was younger than Daniel, sharp-eyed and quick to think, with a tone that balanced his calmness. She studied the maps with him, pointing out enemy movements. "They spread themselves too thin," Amanda said softly. "They are greedy. They take too much at once," Daniel nodded. "Exactly. They think they are unstoppable. That makes them careless. Look here, this fleet guarding the supply lines. They believe no one would dare attack it. That is where we start. Back in the council chamber, Daniel explained his plan. He spoke with a steady confidence that surprised many of the alien leaders. He wanted to attack the Dominion supply fleet, not with armies or fleets, but with tricks and traps. He would use the Horizon's smaller size to move where larger ships could not. He would strike where the enemy was weakest, not strongest. The council was shocked. Some called it madness. The Kethar envoy stood and shouted, "You ask us to gamble with our last soldiers on a human's reckless dream." Others shook their heads in disbelief. But Salai looked at Daniel with wide eyes, her voice rising above the protests. "It is not madness," she said. "It is hope. He sees something we cannot. We are blinded by our fear, but he is not." Admiral Corvin listened, his mind torn. He had led fleets against the Dominion and failed. He had watched countless lives lost, and here stood one human with one ship asking them to trust him. Could it truly be possible? Or was it just another false light before the end? Finally, Corvin spoke. "We have no fleets left to lose," he said. "If the human wishes to fight, then let him fight. We will send what remains of our forces to support. If he fails, then at least we will fall knowing we tried everything." The decision was made. Daniel Carter and the Horizon would lead the first strike. Amanda Lewis worked with Union officers, preparing what few ships remained, teaching them human tactics. She spoke simply, showing them how to move in small groups, how to strike fast and vanish before the enemy could react. The aliens found it strange, even reckless, but Amanda's sharp tone and Daniel's calm presence gave them confidence they had not felt in years. The day of the attack came. The Horizon led the way, its engines burning bright as it slipped into the shadows of an asteroid belt. The small fleet of survivors followed, nervous but determined. Daniel's voice came over the channel, calm and firm. "Stay close. Trust the plan. Strike only when I say. We are not here to win by numbers. We are here to win by being smarter." The Dominion fleet appeared ahead, rows of massive warships guarding their supply lines. The sight filled the Allied crews with fear. But Daniel saw something else. He saw the gaps in their formation, the overconfidence in their patrols, the weakness hidden by their pride. At the perfect moment, Daniel gave the order. The Horizon darted from the shadows, firing with precision. Asteroids, carefully nudged by hidden charges, broke apart and slammed into Dominion ships. Smaller Allied craft struck from angles the Dominion did not expect, their movements sharp and sudden under Amanda's coordination. Chaos filled the battlefield. The Dominion had numbers, but they were slow to react. They had power, but they had no plan for this kind of attack. One by one, their supply ships fell, their lines broken, their warships scattered. From the council chamber, leaders watched in awe. They had expected defeat, but instead they saw the impossible. The human ship moved like a predator, fearless and precise. Daniel's voice carried through the comms, calm and steady, guiding every move. Amanda's sharp commands cut through the noise, turning frightened survivors into a fighting force. For the first time in years, the Dominion was forced to retreat. The battle was not a complete victory, but it was enough. Supplies were lost, ships destroyed, and the great enemy had been wounded. When the Horizon returned, the survivors cheered. The council chamber, once heavy with despair, now buzzed with something new. Hope had returned, carried by one human and his ship. Admiral Corvin rose to meet Daniel Carter as the human stepped into the chamber for the first time. The Admiral's wings unfolded not in pride but in respect. "Captain Carter," he said, his voice strong once more, "you have done what none of us believed possible. You struck the Dominion and lived to tell of it." Daniel's face remained calm, but his words carried quiet strength. "This is only the beginning. If you trust me, if you fight with me, we can do more. We can show the Dominion they are not invincible." Salai's eyes shone with tears, her voice soft but certain. One human answered our call, and one was enough to change everything. After the first battle, the union of allied species felt a flicker of hope. The Dominion had been wounded, but they were still dangerous. Daniel Carter and the Horizon had proven that one human could make a difference, but the real challenge was just beginning. Admiral Corvin gathered the council once more. The room was brighter than before, but the tension was still thick. Leaders spoke with more confidence than the last meeting, but the fear of the Dominion remained. Daniel Carter stood at the center, maps and data projected around him. He studied the Dominion fleets, their supply lines, and the positions of their forces. Amanda Lewis, his first officer, was beside him. pointing to weak spots and discussing angles of attack. The council watched silently, unsure if they could understand the human strategy. "We cannot attack head-on," Daniel said. "They have more ships, more weapons, more numbers. If we try to fight them directly, we will lose. We must strike where they are weakest, where they think no one can reach. That is how we win." Sci-Fi leaned forward, listening carefully. "But where do we start? They are everywhere. How can one ship do all this?" Daniel smiled faintly. "One ship, yes, but not alone. I will lead. The survivors who remain can follow. Small teams, precise strikes. We hit quickly, vanish before they can react. Patience is key. Timing is key. Courage is key." The council debated. Some were nervous, but Daniel's calm confidence was contagious. Slowly, they agreed to follow his plan, giving him what small crews and ships they had left. They would act as scouts, guides, and support. The horizon would be the spear, and the Union forces would be the shield. Preparations took days. Daniel and Amanda trained the Union crews in simple, human methods of combat. They taught them to think quickly, move in small groups, and trust each other. The aliens were unfamiliar with this style. Their culture relied on large fleets, slow and strong, but Daniel showed them a different way. He showed them how to fight smart, not just hard. The first step of the plan was to disrupt the Dominion's communications. Daniel chose a cluster of relay stations far behind the enemy lines. They were lightly guarded because the Dominion did not expect a strike there. "We will cut off their eyes," Daniel explained. "Without their sensors and messages, they will be blind. That is our advantage." The horizon and a small squad of Union ships moved quietly through space, hidden in asteroid fields and shadows. The Dominion ships patrolled lazily, unaware of the approach. Daniel guided the team, his voice calm and clear over the comms. "On my mark, attack the relay stations. Strike fast. Do not linger. Stay together." The attack was precise. Explosions rocked the relay stations, disabling the communications for multiple Dominion fleets. The enemy was confused, unable to send orders quickly, and Daniel's team retreated before the Dominion could respond. The Union ships cheered, and even the council watching from the station felt their hearts lift. Next came supply raids. Daniel targeted the enemy supply convoys, the ones carrying fuel, food, and weapons. Again, the Dominion believed no one could challenge them there. The horizon darted among the convoy, striking quickly, while small Union crews hit weak points. Supplies were destroyed, convoys scattered, and morale among the Dominion troops began to falter. Each success brought new energy to the survivors. They had been beaten for so long, but now they saw a path forward. They had not won the war, but they had won moments. And in those moments they found courage. Daniel and Amanda continued to plan each strike carefully. They studied the enemy, predicted movements, and looked for patterns. They discovered that the Dominion commanders were overconfident, relying on numbers and firepower rather than careful thought. Daniel used this to his advantage, setting traps and ambushes that broke the Dominion's formations. One night, as the horizon moved through a dark sector, Daniel and Amanda spoke quietly on the bridge. "Do you ever wonder if it will be enough?" Amanda asked, her eyes on the stars. Daniel shook his head. "It has to be. We have no choice. We fight because we must, because we cannot do nothing. Even if we fail, we will have tried. But I do not believe we will fail. We just need to stay smart, stay careful, and trust each other." Amanda nodded. "I trust you. And the crew trusts you. That counts for something." The next strike was the largest yet. Daniel planned an ambush near a mining field the Dominion used for resources. He positioned the horizon in the center, small Union ships in hidden positions. When the Dominion fleet arrived, they were drawn into the trap. Asteroids rigged to explode crashed into ships. Smaller craft struck suddenly and vanished. The Dominion could not understand how one human and a few Union ships had destroyed part of their fleet. Chaos ruled the battlefield. The horizon moved like a shadow, appearing and disappearing, guiding the Union ships with precision. The Dominion commanders were forced to retreat, their supply lines broken again. Daniel's plan had worked perfectly. After the battle, the survivors gathered. Even the oldest and most cynical members of the council were amazed. One human, they realized, had changed the tide of the war in ways they never thought possible. Admiral Corvin approached Daniel once more. You have shown us a new way to fight, he said, his voice filled with respect. Your strategies are unlike anything we have seen. You may be the only hope we have left. Daniel nodded, but he did not smile. Hope is not enough. We must continue. The Dominion is strong, and they will not forget these defeats. We must be ready for what comes next. Sci-Fi stayed near the horizon, watching the human captain with wide eyes. He is different, she said quietly. He sees things we cannot. He fights like he was made for this. Maybe he was the answer we were waiting for. And so the Union forces continued to follow Daniel's lead. Small strikes, clever traps, and fast attacks became their new way of war. The Dominion was still powerful, but they were no longer invincible. One human had shown them that courage, intelligence, and determination could turn the tide. And as long as Daniel Carter and Amanda Lewis led them, the survivors believed that victory was possible, even against overwhelming odds. The Dominion had begun to realize that one human ship and a few Union survivors could not be ignored. They were confused and frustrated. Their fleets were powerful, but they could not anticipate the strikes that came from small, fast ships. Daniel Carter had taught the survivors a new way to fight, and the Dominion was paying the price. On the horizon, Daniel and Amanda studied enemy movements. Maps covered the walls of the bridge showing fleet positions, patrol routes, and supply lines. Daniel's face was calm, but his mind was busy. Every move had to be calculated, every strike precise. One mistake could cost them all. The Dominion is reorganizing, Amanda said. They will try to surround us next. We need to anticipate it. Daniel nodded. Exactly. We have wounded them, but now they will strike back harder. We cannot fight the same way. We must use the environment, the asteroids, gravity wells, and surprise. We must be unpredictable. The Council of the Union watched as Daniel explained the plan. This time it was bolder than before. They would use a system of small moons and asteroid belts as traps. The horizon would lure the Dominion fleet into these natural obstacles. The smaller Union ships would attack from hidden positions, striking weak points and then vanishing. It is risky, Daniel admitted. If we miscalculate, we could lose everything. But if we succeed, we can change the course of this war. The Council debated, but this time they had no choice. The Dominion was too strong to face directly, and they had no other forces left. They approved the plan, and the horizon and its small fleet prepared to move. The attack began at dawn, in a remote sector filled with asteroids. Daniel guided the horizon carefully, leading the Dominion fleet toward the trap. The smaller Union ships followed, hidden in shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Dominion fleet moved confidently, believing they had the advantage. But Daniel had studied them well. He knew their patterns, their overconfidence, and their reliance on numbers. Now, Daniel commanded. Asteroids were detonated, sending massive rocks crashing into the Dominion ships. Smaller Union ships attacked suddenly, hitting where the enemy was weakest. Explosions filled space, and Dominion ships scrambled to respond. Daniel guided the horizon with precise maneuvers, darting in and out of the chaos, always staying one step ahead. Amanda coordinated the small ships, directing their attacks and keeping them safe. The alien crews were amazed. They had never fought like this, with speed and cleverness instead of brute force. The Dominion was unprepared for this kind of battle. Slowly, the tide turned. Dominion ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. Supply lines were broken, and their formations were in chaos. Daniel had done what no one thought possible. He had turned the battlefield using his wits and courage. The Council watched the battle unfold from the station. They had feared defeat, but now they saw hope. The horizon moved like a shadow, striking and vanishing. While smaller ships followed the plan perfectly, the Dominion was being beaten, and the survivors cheered quietly at every success. After the battle, the horizon returned to the station. Daniel and Amanda stood on the bridge, exhausted but satisfied. We did it, Amanda said softly. They underestimated us, and it worked in our favor. Daniel shook his head. It is not over. They will return, and they will be stronger. But we have shown that they can be beaten. That knowledge is dangerous to them. That is our advantage. Admiral Corvin approached, wings unfolding in respect. Captain Carter, he said, your strategy has saved us again. Your courage, your intelligence, it is beyond anything we have seen. You have given the Union new hope. Daniel nodded, but his eyes were on the stars. Hope is just the beginning. We must keep moving, keep striking. If we pause, we lose the advantage. The Dominion is strong, but they are not invincible. Sci-Fi stayed nearby, watching him closely. She had seen fear and despair in this council, but now she saw determination and courage. She realized that Daniel Carter was more than a human. He was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of what one individual could do. The survivors trained harder, moved faster, and trusted more in Daniel's plan. Each strike, each small victory built their confidence. The Dominion still controlled much of the galaxy, but the survivors had learned to fight in a new way. They had learned to think like humans, to use speed, intelligence, and surprise. Daniel and Amanda continued to guide them, planning each movement carefully. They never underestimated the enemy, and they never let fear take over. The horizon became a symbol, a shadow moving through space, striking when least expected. Every victory, small as it was, gave the survivors hope. And hope, as they learned, could be as powerful as any weapon. With Daniel Carter leading, they believed they could face the Dominion and survive, and one day perhaps even win. The Dominion was enraged. They had been humiliated repeatedly by one human ship and a few small Union crews. Daniel Carter and the horizon had struck faster, smarter, and with more precision than any Dominion commander could have expected. Now they were planning a massive counterattack, hoping to crush the human and the Union survivors once and for all. Daniel studied the enemy movements carefully. He knew the Dominion would come with everything they had. The horizon and the Union survivors were small in number, but they had learned to fight differently. They had speed, strategy, and courage. They had learned to think like humans, and that made all the difference. "They are coming," Amanda said, pointing at the map. "A full fleet. More than we have ever faced." Daniel nodded. "We expected this. It is time to show them what one human and determined allies can do." The plan was risky. The horizon would lead the fleet into a narrow system filled with asteroids and moons. Daniel knew the Dominion ships could not maneuver easily here. The smaller Union ships would hide among the rocks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "We may lose some of our own," Daniel said quietly, "but we will hit them harder than they expect. We must be ready to adapt. If we stick to the plan, we can survive." The Council of the Union agreed. This was their last chance to make a difference, and they trusted Daniel. Even Admiral Corvin, once skeptical, now fully believed that one human could guide them to victory. The fleet moved into the system. The Dominion ships followed, confident and slow. They believed their numbers would win the battle, as always. But Daniel had prepared traps and hidden attacks. Every asteroid, every moon, every shadow was a potential advantage. The horizon darted ahead, moving like a ghost. Small Union ships followed, attacking suddenly and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The Dominion ships were caught off guard. Explosions rocked the system and confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Daniel guided each attack with precision. He communicated with Amanda and the Union crews, coordinating strikes and retreats with skill. Each move was calculated, every action timed to perfection. The Dominion, for the first time in centuries, was unsure how to react. The battle raged for hours. The Dominion fired relentlessly, but their large ships could not navigate the traps Daniel had prepared. The horizon moved quickly, striking weak points and retreating before retaliation could come. Small Union ships used the environment to hide, then attacked with precision. Sci-Fi watched from the council station, unable to tear her eyes away from the battle. She had never seen anything like this. One human was leading the fight, and the Union survivors were following, turning fear into courage. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Dominion ships were destroyed, supply lines broken, and their fleet scattered. Daniel had shown that even the most powerful enemy could be challenged with intelligence, courage, and careful planning. Admiral Corvin spoke over the comms, his voice full of awe. "Captain Carter, you have done it. You have turned the battle. The Dominion is retreating." Daniel did not relax. "We are not finished. They may regroup. We must press the advantage and keep them off balance." The horizon and the Union ships continued to pursue, striking where the Dominion was weakest. Each victory built confidence, courage, and determination. The survivors had learned a new way to fight, and Daniel had become more than a leader. He was a symbol of hope and resilience. When the battle finally ended, the Dominion had retreated far from the system. The Union survivors were battered but alive. They had struck a blow that no one thought possible. They had survived against overwhelming odds. Back on the station, the council met once more. They were exhausted but filled with new hope. Sci-Fi spoke first. We sent a call for help and one human answered. He has shown us that we can fight back. That we are not helpless, Admiral Corvin nodded. One human, yes. But he reminded us of what we have lost. He reminded us that courage, intelligence, and determination can change the outcome even when all seems lost. Daniel and Amanda stood quietly, letting the council and survivors absorb the moment. They did not boast. They did not demand praise. They had done what was necessary, and now it was time to plan the next step. The survivors trained harder, moved faster, and learned to think strategically. They had witnessed the power of one human who refused to surrender, and it had inspired them all. The Dominion still existed, still threatened the galaxy, but hope had returned. Daniel Carter became a symbol of defiance, intelligence, and courage. Amanda Lewis was his trusted partner, guiding and teaching the Union survivors. Together, they had changed the course of a war that many thought was lost. One human had answered the call, and one human had been enough to remind the galaxy that courage, strategy, and determination could challenge even the most powerful enemy. The Union had survived, not through sheer numbers, but through the spirit and intelligence of one determined individual. And as long as Daniel Carter led, hope would never die.